Hi, my name is Raina Shea Broussard. This special reflection project was prepared as part of a course in spiritual direction training under the Find Spiritual Direction School, sponsored by the Episcopal Diocese of Texas. The Christian historical movement that has had the most profound influence on my Christian spiritual formation and journey is the New Thought movement and unity. Sometime in the 1800s, someone said, "If you think a new thought, you'll have a new experience." This quote has been attributed to a variety of speakers and authors, but I've not been able to narrow down its source. This is probably due to the fact that its sentiment has become ubiquitous. In any case, the quote exemplifies well the belief at the center of the New Thought movement, which is that our thoughts have a direct effect on our experience of reality. Since New Thought and unity are surely new to most of my audience, and to give some context to my personal experience, I'll share a little background on the history of New Thought and unity, a few significant people in the movement, and some key tenets of belief. Then I'll focus on my understanding of spiritual maturity and my own spiritual growth. There are a few basic ideas that New Thought teachings have held in common. The primary belief is a belief in oneness. All is one. There is nothing else. We aren't always consciously aware of this, but we strive to gain this awareness in consciousness. Because we are all one, there is no separation, so there is no need for atonement. Any apparent separation comes from humanity, our walls, issues, fears. Unity calls this error thinking. Our false beliefs of separation are at the heart of all suffering. We use spiritual practices to remind us of oneness. The ideas of the New Thought movement were influenced by Plato, the teachings of Jesus, Transcendentalism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Theosophy, and the advent of science with the Age of Reason. Emma Curtis Hopkins, a significant New Thought teacher, is known as the teacher of teachers because she taught the founders and influential teachers of several subsequent and lasting New Thought churches, including Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, the founders of Unity. H. Emily Cady, who wrote a seminal work of the Unity movement called Lessons in Truth. Nona Brooks and Melinda Kramer, who separately founded Divine Science. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Religious Science. And Emmett Fox, a widely read author and Divine Science minister. Emma Curtis Hopkins lived in New York City in the late 1800s. I have a little story to share about her that I think exemplifies in a nutshell the foundation of her beliefs. She would periodically get all dressed up in her best finery and go out to an expensive restaurant to eat, with no money on hand. Believing that God was her source and supply, she simply trusted that the funds for her meal would show up. And invariably, by the end of her delicious and extravagant gustatory experience, someone would offer to pay for her meal. She would run into someone she knew who would declare, "Oh, let me get that for you." Or she'd meet someone who would say, "Oh, you're eating alone? Let me buy your meal." If I could ask a question of any New Thought founders, I would ask Emma Curtis Hopkins where she found the audacity within herself, a deep well of faith and trust, to go to restaurants without money to pay for her meal. Unity grew out of the New Thought movement. Unity is for people who might call themselves spiritual but not religious. Unity is a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity based on the teachings of Jesus and the power of prayer. Unity honors the universal truths in all religions and respects each individual's right to choose a spiritual path. Some of what you'll find in Unity might sound familiar and other parts brand new. Although the principles of healing and prosperity taught in Unity have now been scientifically explained, the ideas must have seemed radical when they were put forth by founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore beginning in the 1880s. In 1886, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore attended New Thought classes held by Dr. E.B. Weeks. Myrtle subsequently recovered from chronic tuberculosis and attributed her recovery to her use of prayer and other methods learned in Weeks's classes. Subsequently, Charles began to heal from his childhood accident, a development that he, too, attributed to following this philosophy. Charles Fillmore became a devoted student of philosophy and religion. In 1890, Charles and Myrtle organized a prayer group that would later become Silent Unity. They also suggested that all their magazine subscribers pray together at a certain time each evening, and they began to answer prayer requests by letter. This quickly grew into a prayer ministry now called Silent Unity, which responds by letter, phone, email, and text to 1.4 million prayer requests a year. Someone is available in the prayer cupola at Unity Village 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for prayer. The official founding of Unity is usually considered 1889, when Charles left his real estate business to focus entirely on publishing a new periodical, Modern Thought. In 1891, the Fillmore's Unity magazine was first published. Unity magazine and Daily Word are still published today with global circulation. Charles originally had no intentions of Unity becoming an organized religion. In fact, groups would meet on Sunday afternoons after attending their own churches for prayer and study. Unity has no official, formal dogma. The Fillmores were reluctant to even issue a statement of beliefs, as they wanted to remain in constant spiritual exploration. Later, leaders within Unity distilled their teachings into the 5 basic principles. 1. There is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and in my life, everywhere and always. God, the good, is the force of love and wisdom that underlies all of existence. There is no other enduring power and presence. 2. We are spiritual beings, created in God's image. Our essence is of God, therefore all people are inherently good. This God essence was fully expressed in Jesus, the Christ. 3. We are co-creators with God, creating our life experiences through thoughts held in mind. 4. Through prayer and meditation, we align our heart-mind with God. Denials and affirmations are tools we use to increase our awareness of God. 5. Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them in our thoughts, words, and actions. If I could ask a question of the Unity founders, I would like to ask Myrtle Fillmore what she thinks about certain physical conditions that cannot be overcome so easily through affirmative prayer. I've come to believe that circumstances in our lives exist on a continuum, ranging from that which we cannot change in reality without use of technology, such as our eye color or a missing limb, to that which can be changed easily, such as working to earn money or a degree. There are situations that may be difficult to change, but we can always change our perspective or viewpoint of things. If we get fired from a job, we can shift our thinking and recognize that this is for our good, allowing us to explore a different career path that is more in alignment with our life mission. Along this continuum, though, it gets trickier, presenting situations that can be very difficult to change. Myrtle Fillmore did believe and taught that in co-creation with God, we can heal ourselves through the power of heart-mind action. I would want to ask Myrtle Fillmore what she thinks about situations where someone doesn't seem able to heal themselves. I think I've worked out the answer for myself, but it is still somewhat of a mystery, and I think she would have an interesting and helpful answer. I've been asked to address in what ways I've noticed a change in my spiritual maturity as a result of New Thought and Unity. First, though, I feel it necessary to answer the question, what is spiritual maturity to me? To me, spiritual maturity involves 4 main aspects. They are, 1. Evolution in our understanding of the nature of God. 2. Growth in self-awareness and self-love. 3. Expansion of our relationship with God. And 4. Acceptance and love of other human beings as an outpicturing of our love of self and God. I believe spiritual maturity needs to include an eventual evolution in our understanding of the nature of God to include a much larger and greater God than what we learned as children. Real spiritual maturity comes when we discard the pre-critical naivete that sees God as an old white man with a long white beard, sitting on a large golden throne in the sky. Someone whom we go to only when we need things or help. When we take on a more expansive view of God as a being, an essence, a motive force, and the creative principle at work in our lives, we can release the anthropomorphic ideas that put God in a box of our own making. Spiritual maturity has to include self-awareness and introspection. Sister Syncretica said, self-awareness is God-awareness. The ability to look honestly at ourselves and our relationships and learn from our mistakes is essential to spiritual growth. By understanding our personality, motivations, and behavioral tendencies, we can come to understand our defensive strategies and attempts to control life and others. We recognize that we may have acquired ways of trying to gain the love that we all seek, which is only truly fulfilled by God's presence in our lives. By growing closer to ourselves and growing in love and acceptance for ourselves, we grow closer to God and to other human beings. In addition to expanding our concept of the nature of God, spiritual maturity means expanding our relationship with the divine. Personal growth helps us to accept that God loves us completely and unconditionally. We come to understand that God is not like a human parent who punishes us for being bad and rewards us for being good. We eventually learn that everything that happens in our lives is for our good, that even difficult situations arise as opportunities for us to grow in our humanity and spirituality. Most importantly, we become able to step into gratitude for all that we are and have. At some point, spiritual maturity has to mean growing in our love for other human beings, animal creatures, and the planet. When our view of God and of God's love expands, we recognize that God's love always includes, rather than excludes, others. When we can see a piece of God within every human being, we are better able to love every human. We can release our judgments about what we think God thinks about others. We release the need to force our religious beliefs and views on others. We also embrace our role as stewards of the planet and animals created for our caretaking. So now that I've attempted to define spiritual maturity in my view, I return to the question, in what ways have I noticed a change in my own spiritual maturity as a result of New Thought and Unity? Charles Fillmore believed the foundation of understanding God was a combination of mysticism and science. As quantum science blurs the lines between the supposed material and spiritual worlds, I am aided in my quest to understand God. Mysticism is the belief that knowledge of God can come through direct experience and communion with the divine. I've studied at least a little bit about different world religions, and the perennial philosophy especially has helped me to grow my vision of God. The perennial philosophy is a perspective in philosophy and spirituality that views all the great religions and wisdom traditions as originating from the same mystical experience of ultimate reality. The central idea is that divine truth is one, timeless, and universal, and that the different religions are but different languages expressing that one truth. A more popular interpretation argues for universalism, the idea that all religions, underneath seeming differences, point to the same truth. Through a lifetime of reading and study, along with my personal experiences with God, I have come to embrace a truly expansive view of the nature of God that is not hampered by the dictates of religion or culture. Unity teaches, and I believe, in panentheism, a concept that affirms, all that I am is God. I am not all that God is. In what ways have I noticed my personal behavior and attitudes changing or having been changed by unity? I've spent many years doing personal growth work. Unity teachings inherently suggest that we should take personal responsibility for our lives, thoughts, and behaviors. This belief propelled me on a path of introspection and self-discovery. Psychological approaches applied to my life have helped me to better understand myself and how I relate to others. I have a variety of tools in my personal toolbox for noticing patterns in my life, recognizing my emotional reactions to life rooting out lies that my mind tells me in its attempts to understand my experiences, telling the truth to realign myself with the divine, and making new choices and visions for the life I want for myself and others. This ability to see inside myself helps me to see the divine within me, as well as the divine within others. Unity emphasizes listening to the still small voice within. Unity believes that prayer and meditation include going into the silence, for that is where we meet the sacred. Over the years and across many personal experiences, by practicing listening to my intuition and following its guidance, I've grown in my ability to recognize the still small voice within me. I've practiced guided meditation and journaling off and on throughout my adulthood, but I'm grateful to say that in the last year, silent meditation and journaling have finally become a regular part of my life that I don't want to be without. I suppose the greatest sign of my spiritual maturity has been my ability to truly see that life and God are truly for me and never against me. In spite of experiencing a disabling chronic illness and pain, I am able to see that my life abounds with blessings. Especially when my experience of life seems at its worst, my ability to claim gratitude for all the good in my life lifts me up in my relationship with the sacred. In his book, Integral Christianity, Paul Smith says, Jesus talked about God, to God, and as God. We can too. This apparent contradiction and my attempts to hold seemingly conflicting ideas in my heart and mind at once guide my understanding of and relationship with the divine. So how has unity affected my behavior and attitude towards others? Unity has given me a deeper understanding of a universal Christ that is incarnated throughout God's creation, in everyone and everything, not merely the personage of Jesus who lived 2 millennia ago. I strive to see the Christ light within everyone. While I can struggle with this at times, especially when my anger is riled or I see behaviors that upset me, my underlying belief that every human is a child of God calls me to afford everyone respect and offer my attempts at understanding and compassion. Through knowing myself better and knowing God better, I've grown in my consideration toward others. I'm better able to process and release negative emotions about and toward others. I'm able to send others love and light, even if I have strong feelings about them. I'm able to transform negative feelings into understanding, forgiveness, and compassion. For many years, I was so focused on working on myself and my own personal growth that I had little awareness of the greater community and society at large. Finally, I came to realize that politics and living in society with others on this planet is all about how we treat our neighbors on a grander scale than the individual. It can be challenging to care about the world, its animals, and its people, while also holding faith in the right divine order in manifestation. And of course, we can't do it all. I try to ask that still small voice within me, what is mine to do today, and let myself be guided by that. Finally, I've been asked to address how would I express my passion about unity to a directee, to seekers. It seems to me that it isn't really my role as a spiritual guide to express my passion about unity to a directee, especially or unless they ask me about what I believe, in which case I would share willingly and carefully. In the course of spending time with a directee, I need to share of myself to create mutual trust and willingness to go deeper. I imagine, though, that this would happen more like trickles of water rather than the gushing of a faucet. I would ask a directee questions about what they believe about the nature of God, the nature of humans, and the nature of the relationship between God and humans. I would ask about the state of their relationships with themselves, with other humans, with animals in the planet, with God, and with their prayer and meditation life. I believe that for a seeker, all these topics are at a choice point. Recently, I heard a story about a man who, upon meeting a man who was a pastor, told the pastor that he didn't believe in God. The pastor turned to him and said, "Well, tell me about this God that you don't believe in." We can choose the kind of God we believe in, and it's important to evaluate whether or not what we have chosen to believe is serving us in our lives or not. I would share from my own studies and experiences, but only, I think, as it pertains to where the seeker is in their own path. Likewise, I might share tools from my toolbox that have served me, and invite seekers to look at their own lives with a different perspective. I started this presentation with the new thought idea that our thoughts affect our experiences. I believe that what we think about God is at the foundation of our experiences of life, and just like all of our other thoughts, we can choose to believe in a God that gifts us with the most enriching life experiences, if we so desire. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that I have introduced you to some new ideas and possibly given you some food for thought for your own spiritual path.